It is numbered to 2024-01. That is a new ordinance. That's not an amending of a previous ordinance.
I didn't say it was amended.
I didn't say you did. I'm finishing my question. Does that require us to have a public hearing to pass a new ordinance so that people do have an opportunity to review it?
No, we had correspondence from Shepard's office, but this is what we have to do. Just because the original ordinance was quite similar to this, only this is an updated.
Okay, but it's dated with 2024-01, which makes it a new ordinance that is then repealing the previous ordinance. As a new ordinance, wouldn't that require a public hearing? Well, a public hearing is not the same. A public hearing actually has to be announced to the people publicly so that they have an opportunity to review the document and to have their comments about whether or not they want to move forward with this. The people of the township have the right to actually know what we're doing, and this clearly is going to have an effect on them, whether we do this or not. My second question, equally important, is that in the previous correspondence, a question is asked regarding whether or not putting this ordinance through would change the fact that we are in danger of suspension from the program for violations that have been unresolved. And basically that the suggestion was made that we go ahead and put this new ordinance through to make Eagle happy, but it may not actually have an effect on whether or not we are suspended from the program because of those unresolved violations. In addition to that, these unresolved violations were first communicated to the township in December of 2022. So it's been a year and a half, and there has been very little progress made in actually responding to those violations. So even if we approve this without a public hearing, without a public review period, and get this into Eagle, which I have some questions about whether or not we can legally even do that, but if we were to do that, that in the end, it's not going to mitigate the damage financially to our residents. I believe it said that there were 63 residents that have flood insurance in our township.
Equaling $12 million.
So there's 63 people out there that still have that potential to have that damage, meaning that they're going to call their mortgages due because they don't have flood insurance, or they're going to have to obtain it otherwise at a much greater expense. So those would be my two questions. The actual public hearing, because I do believe that would be required for a new ordinance, and it appears to be a new ordinance. And secondly, what effect that's going to have on our suspension from the program and the ability of our citizens to be able to get flood insurance through FEMA.
We are following what our attorneys told us we had to do, and basically what Eagle has told us we had to do to comply with this flood damage prevention ordinance. So
the question is, we're doing what Eagle says, we're doing what Charlie Hewitt says, are we doing what the letter of the law says?
we're doing what
The letter of the law says.
Rich Shepard told us to do. This started with Rich Shepard. He dealt with, I don't know, it was 5 or 6 other townships, and we were included in that back in May.
But they didn't have the violations we had. We had 52 violations.
We don't know that for a fact either way.
But every other ordinance that we have put through, we have had to have a public hearing. I mean, we had multiple public hearings, even to amend the ordinance for this cabin development. Multiple public hearings out of the Planning Commission. When we did the solar ordinance, we had multiple public hearings for that. This has the appearance of a new ordinance, and yet there's been no public hearing. I think that might be a problem.
So did you take the time to check with Mr. Shepard on it?
We're not allowed to talk to the lawyer.
We don't talk to
They
Mr.
won't call
Shepard.
us, and they won't talk to us. Remember, at the end of our last Monday's meeting, you stated, well, everybody goes through the supervisor in other townships.
Well, we haven't voted on that.
Okay, but in addition to that, I did not receive notice
They won't talk
or
to
even
us.
a copy of this ordinance until 10 o'clock Saturday morning. So when was I supposed to? The meeting started at 10 o'clock today. When was I supposed to talk to the attorney? to actually have that question asked.
You brought it up at the last meeting.
I did, and he said that they were still working on it, and I heard nothing more until
Yeah.
you announced
We
this
didn't
meeting.
have till Thursday, the 18th, Eagle's approval
Right.
on it. So yes, they were still working on it till Thursday.
Okay, but there was no way for me to get in touch with him when I was notified on Saturday morning and for the very first time shown this ordinance. So, you know, it wasn't released to the public, there was no public hearing on it, and it's an ordinance. That is pretty much par for the course with an ordinance, that you have to have a public hearing.
As a member of the public, can I speak on what I just read?
Sure. We've done everything else today, why not?
Well, this Sam seems like a very contradictive, section 5 and section 6. I believe if you all read that, you should go to our past township flood damage prevention ordinances. I believe our past ordinance was written very, very well to protect the citizens of the township. I think number 5, when it says most restrictive standards, it should state which restrictive standards that are being kept. And when you look at the repeal part, it says all ordinances or parts of an ordinance in conflict are hereby repealed. Does that make it so the whole other ordinance is repealed? Because the other ordinance still had Richard Sabias, who was the past building inspector, as the enforcer. The only thing I can say is I believe it had also that the prosecution was done by the Bay County prosecutor in that ordinance. So I don't know if that comes as the most restrictive standards. I feel that if the board had the past ordinance, which I have produced to this board in the past, actually, I think it was probably just before the DEQ started this, which is kind of convenient, I think. I think that this is something that the citizens who it affects or have been affected in the past need to understand what Section 5 and Section 6 says, because as a board, if you can't tell me what parts are the restrictive standards, and you can't tell me which parts are repealed, it's just another confusing thing to the citizens of the township.
As a board member, I'd like to request a 5-minute recess to pull the previous ordinance.
And this honestly is just a matter of, I believe, integrity to this ordinance. I believe most of this ordinance, when you read through Section 4, it's all good, but then you get to Section 5 and Section 6, and it becomes confusing. Because if you don't know what the past ordinance is, you don't realize what we have at play here. You don't realize what we have at stake to protect. These are always to protect the citizens. You know, health, safety, and welfare is what this flood damage ordinance should be for. So I just fully believe that if you guys looked at the past one, the past ordinance is, I believe, spot on to take care of the citizen.
In addition to that, this ordinance is asking us to adopt things that we've never actually been provided with, the flood insurance rate map, the flood insurance study. In addition to that, the National Flood Insurance Act, as amended, 44 CFR Section 60.3, as well as State Construction Code Act. I mean, it references that we're adopting all these things that have never been provided to us to even review. So we're adopting them blindly. And, you know, we didn't even have any supporting documentation on what this actually meant. So I think that there's a series of concerns here related to this ordinance that would have been better had we actually been able to address them a couple of months ago as a board.
So my question that I sit back on is a 5-minute recess so that the previous ordinance can be pulled. So I'd like to
I will
that.
second that.
But the previous ordinance isn't going to tell you what they're keeping and getting rid of.
Previous ordinance should tell me what is number 5 and what is the repealing of number 6.
No, it won't.
Why not?
Well, it's going to tell you what ain't on this ordinance.
That's what I want to know.
This seems very skeletal as compared to what we previously had in place. So if we as a board are going to be asked to repeal
So
something,
you've
then we need to
already
see what
looked
we're
at,
repealing.
you've already looked at the previous one.
I haven't.
You have.
I've seen it before. not recently, not to compare and contrast. So if you could provide it, that would be fantastic.
In March, Sherry had a flood damage ordinance request from me that she produced. Resolution to manage floodplain development, that was the end of March. This was produced. So in May, the DEQ decided to change it, kind of.
So there's a motion on the floor to take a 5-minute recess to produce that. Probably the easiest place for us to find it is in that FOIA at the end of March. Wait, we got a motion on the floor. We got a motion.
I thought Lori seconded it.
He did, but we got a motion on the floor, we're gonna vote on it.
Actually, ordinance number 12 for the township.
So it doesn't have to be a roll call vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. So we're gonna take a 5-minute recess.
Can you tell me what the FOIA number on that is?
Yes, ma'am. Hold on just one second. You have it as FOIA request 1.
March.
It's March 24th of 2024.
Number 1.
That's what you have it on there as. On March 24th. It's actually, the question I would say, you know, I know you're in recess, but this is 13 pages long. This is only 2. So,
You know David Gross email this? By chance?
township
No, I don't. Not often.
And it's very thorough and I feel well written. But I'll look at the bottom and see. Kathleen Brago and Lloyd Pageant.
Well,
And that was published.
maybe how would they?
There's also one in 1995.
Well, the board officially did it,
November.
just, was that? No, I think we officially did it in June.
Okay.
And this is what she provided, flood control ordinance, by amending section 3.1, visitor control maps.
Well, according to a quick check here, ordinances must have a number and a short title, which this does. Ordinances cannot be passed at the same meeting they are introduced. Ordinance cannot be passed before they are published. The township clerk records ordinances in a book called the ordinance book. The supervisor and township clerk must authenticate the record with their signatures. So that's just a quick check.
Well, we were told to have the meeting and then publish it.
Well, you publish it after it's approved, but you're supposed to publish it for review prior to the approval and prior to the public hearing. That's what this is saying.
So this ordinance to designate an enforcing agency to discharge the responsibility of the township of Caucon located and to designate regulated flood hazard areas under the provisions of the.
Well, it doesn't really matter what it says. At the top it says ordinance number. So that's a new ordinance. I mean, we're in recess if you want to call Chuck real quick and ask him. But everything that I'm finding and
typed it
everything
up.
I've heard. Well, he can type up the ordinance, but that doesn't mean that he's giving you good information about the process. Everything is very last minute here, but according to Michigan law, it says they cannot be passed at the same meeting they are introduced. They cannot be passed before they are published. And it clearly says
And they
that you
told
have to have
us
a public hearing.
to pass it and then publish it.
You publish it after it's approved, but you still have to publish it for
'Cause
review of
if
the
it's-
public and have a public hearing.
If it's not published, it don't become law. We learned that with marijuana.
This actually has to go.
But that's
So-
after it's approved.
Yeah.
Before it's approved.
You
it has
guys,
to be
this
published.
actually, to change this ordinance, Article 4, I just showed Mr. Cush, it actually shows any changes has to go through the zoning board of appeals. To establish the township of Calhoun shall hear and decide appeals and request for variances from the requirements of this ordinance. I mean, there's a lot to do with the Board of Appeals in this ordinance.
Yeah, I really see how I have that. One is a different.
Now, the public hearing can be held at a regular meeting or at a special meeting that's called for the purpose, but the township clerk must provide public notice of the meeting's time, date, and location. Was this ever put in the Pink County Journal that we were gonna have this meeting today? Well, it probably wasn't, right, because you didn't tell us until Saturday, so.
Maybe we didn't know till Thursday.
Well, I'm just saying, we didn't know until Saturday, so clearly you couldn't have gotten it in the Pink County
We all
Journal
found out
in
through the
time.
Ordinance number 12.
But,
Oh.
and there was no time for it to be published in the.
So if we put it in the journal today,
Okay, but
this week,
what FOIA
and
number is it?
on Monday, is that,
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a long time.
Is this
Yeah.
FOIA?
because that's what we got in trouble with on the cabinet.
Well, we
contract.
might need to double check that, because I think there are some public hearing requirements when it comes to how many
There's no way to
days
get
in
a public hearing done
advance.
between now and the 31st.
I just looked at
Today's the 22nd, that's 10 days.
Do we have a person in Lansing that we can talk to in
Or-
reference to this?
Well,
Or-
is it 92?
No, the 92 is,
Oh,
the
98.
adjustment. This is when it's posted.
Because if we can pass it, and we can send it, and then we can all be in trouble for not following the
Well,
letter
So
of the
that's
law.
probably.
According to this, administrative review, variance, exceptions, and special approvals requires at least 15 days notice of the public hearing.
I do know that.
Agency or office acting on behalf of an agency requires at least 10 days and no more than 60 days notice, published in at least 3 newspapers of general circulation in different parts of the state. So that's a little bit different. That would be more of a state agency, I think.
We're just Pink County Journal being a legal paper.
But MCL 125.3871 says not less than 15 days before the date of the hearing, notice of the date, time, and place of the hearing shall be sent to that person at the address by mailer shall be published in a newspaper of general circulation in the municipality.
And you have the old ordinance book?
I don't, no, I think they're all back in
Oh, in the safe?
the, I don't think I have that one anymore.
This does show all the federal acts and laws that are incorporated in the floodplain. It's very defined. It's,
Well, I mean, we have not even been provided with the map of our region to know what areas this actually even takes into
Well,
account, so that concerns
if you were to
me.
go on GIS,
Yeah, I
yeah.
know you can do it that way, but this is specific to FEMA's map.
correct, in FEMA, we do have on our GIS the option to go to a FEMA floodplain. There's specifics on our Bay County GIS system that you can exempt yourself out of certain, it's a really cool system, but you gotta layer it.
Right, right.
That is how the insurance companies because I sat in the GIS department and they explained all that to me.
Mhm.
Because FEMA sends them the data to update their mapping. And that's how, you know whether you're in a flood zone, because there's flood zone X and certain things have different rates. So but this is a very well-written ordinance that I think the township.
The existing one, not this
existing
one.
Yes.
So actually, what I have in front of me is the legal assistant sending this to Eagle on May 16th, 2024. So,
But when it comes to the variance of changing it at all, it has to go through the Board of Appeals for a change, as it appears.
I would agree with that. I have a few things that I'm hung up on here. But FEMA actually, Eagle, working as the intermediary with FEMA, actually responded that the language of the ordinance looked good on June 10th. So,
I mean, even development
There's plenty of time
permits,
to do that.
development permits, this is so detailed. The designation of the building inspector.
Well, we have it here. Apparently, it ain't gonna be easy to copy out of this book right away. 'Cause, like I say, I do believe it is 12 or 13 pages long.
So is that the one that they used?
Well, this
Match up
is,
here, section 5.
that's 11. Here's ordinance 12. So, if this is 13 pages long, and this is 2 pages long,
I just emailed it to all of your emails, if you guys wanted to bring it up on your phones if you had to.
Government or personal or what? I don't.
It's government.
Okay, no, it went to.
No, I mean, at
Trustee
like clerk,
cap.
Yeah,
clerk
clerk.
at TWP.
Trustee.
I can't bring mine up on my phone.
Mr. Kusch, do you have anything to add to this at all, to this discussion? Because of the fact that Board of Review was,
It's scary.
in your expertise,
I didn't get
should this have went to Board of Review prior to this?
Because that's what the law says. That's what the law says.
I would find it hard to believe that Mr. Shepherd, who handles several townships in the district, would send us anything that we shouldn't be doing. So,
I just read you
I'm-
the state
I-
law, though, that says you have to have a public hearing and the notice has to be published, and none of those were done. That's state law.
are you fine? Are you done now?
Well, that is actually state law that
That
we're
is
supposed to
state
operate
law.
under.
Does it apply to this?
Can I see those 2 ordinance issues that we were just talking about in that book, please? Because I didn't get the email to my,
I didn't get it either yet.
oh, it just showed up. So I will look up, because before anything further is discussed, we didn't come out of recess officially.
That's true.
So at this point, let's look at our ordinances and see what it specifically says about whatever.
So let's go back into session. I make a motion to go back into the meeting. Do I hear a second? Been moved and seconded to go back into the meeting. All those signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. I truly believe that I will take the time to speak to Mr. Shepherd, but I would find it hard to believe that he would advise us on how to handle this. Eagle's approving it this way, that we shouldn't at least adopt this so we can get it into the newspaper on what they told us we had to do, and then if there's something different, we can always stop that part of it and then decide what we're gonna do from then, or have Mr. Shepherd